All right, let's go. In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about how to install Git and how to set up a GitHub account. And then we're going to make some changes on our local machine to some basic files and push those into an online Git repository using GitHub. So real quick, the difference between Git and GitHub, because they're not the same thing. Git is a version control system. And what that means is it's a way to track your work, save your progress, and you can do that locally. But the problem is when you're local, only you have access to it. So there's other companies similar to GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLabs. They mostly do the same thing. And what that is they'll have a website online. And once you push your code from, let's say, your local machine into GitHub, which is what we're going to do here in a few minutes, now you can collaborate with other members of your team, or you could have a lot of open source projects are on GitHub or Bitbucket, which can allow people to look at your code and even add to your code and improve it. So the first step we want to do is have GitHub installed on our local machines. I've already done that, but what we want to do is go to the Git website, not GitHub, and let's just do a search for Git, and it's the git-scm.com. That's the website there. You want to go here, you want to go to downloads, and you can have a Mac version, Windows version, or Linux. I'm on a Windows machine, so obviously download what you have. Click that, select your 32-bit or 62-bit, and download that to your local machine. So how do we know that we have Git installed on our machine? So let's open up a command prompt. And for those who don't know, you can go here and hit CMD. I already had it open. And it opens up your command prompt. And if you have Git installed after you run through that process, just run a command, git -- version. What that'll do, it'll tell you what version you have on your machine. If you see that message, then you're good to go. Everything's set up and you can use Git. If you don't see that, then there's probably an issue with your installation, and go back and make sure that it's installed correctly. So now that we have Git installed on a local machine, so we want to go and create a GitHub account if you don't already have one. And so if you want to do that, you want to go to github.com and go through the sign up process. They'll ask you for they'll ask you for your email, they'll ask you for your username and your password. Then you'll have to verify your email address with some code that they'll send to you. So go through that process. A lot of things are optional, so just bypass it. Maybe some of the things will say, what are you using this for? You know, just kind of click continue until you get your account set up. Once your account is set up on GitHub, you'll be presented with this page, and it just tells you, you can create a repository, import repository, just a lot of other information that you could use, but we're going to come back to this page here in a minute. So what we want to do next is let's make some files on our local machine that we want to push to GitHub. And this is just a very basic tutorial, so we're not going to go too advanced on what I'm doing here, but I'll talk you through it as I go. So let's create a new directory to house some files. So I'm gonna go to my C drive. I already have a folder in here called Git, and I'm gonna make a new directory called, let's call it Git Setup. You can name it whatever you want. And now I'm going to go into that directory. I'll open up the file structure here so you could see. I created this folder, Git Setup. I'm gonna go in here, and there's nothing in this file. It's nothing in this directory. It's completely empty. So to get set up, to have Git working in that directory I just made, we have to run a command that initializes that directory. That command is called Git Init. So you want to make sure you're in the directory you made, and you run this command, Git Init. Hit enter, and we'll get a message that says it initialized our empty Git repository, followed by our directory, and you see this .git. So what Git did here is it added another file. So if we come here, you'll see there's a file here, .git. This is the where the magic happens. That's where all the things you'll see with tracking our files, seeing who edited our files, what the history of the files are, all of that is in this little file called .git, and it needs to be here. Don't delete this file. It's very important. You only have to run that git init once, and it tracks your history of this directory forever, as long as you have that. If you delete it, you lose everything. So that's very important. Leave that there. So now that we have Git initialized in that directory, let's just add a file here. Let's add a text document. We're not gonna get too fancy here, and we'll call this, let's call it just test.txt. Let's open up this file, and we will just add some basic text. And save it. So what happened here? We saved a file into a repository that Git is following. So if we come back to our command prompt in this window, there's another command that we can use called Git Status, and it'll let us know what's going on in that directory. So you'll see here we got a message. There's no commits yet. We have an untracked file called test.txt. All right, that's the one that we added. So Git is not tracking this file right now, but we want it to track it. So what do we have to do? Well, Git tells us run Git Add with the file name. All right, let's do that. So we're going to add Git Add test.txt and hit enter. Let's check Git Status again, and you'll see that message changed. Now it's green text. There's no commits yet. And what we want to do now is we want to commit this into our repository. We can do that by running a command, git commit -m for message, and we'll call this my first git commit, and hit enter. And here's our message. It gives us a unique identifier. Part of it shows us our message, and we had one file changed and one insertion. So we know that's been added to our repository. Let's run Git Status, and you'll see nothing to commit. Our working tree is clean, so we're good to go. We've now initialized Git in our directory. We added a file. We added some text to that file. We committed it into our local repository, not the GitHub account. So it's all this is local, only I can see it, no one else can have access to it. But we maybe want a teammate to be able to work on this file as well. So how do we do that? We're going to need to create a repository on GitHub. So let's go back to GitHub, and you'll see we have this big green button here called Create Repository. So let's click that. And now we can see here, this is my username I just created, and we can give this a repository name. Let's call this my first repo. You could add a description if you want. I'm not going to do that. You can add readme, git ignore files, or licenses, but for this tutorial, we're going to skip all that, and we're just going to go ahead and click create repository. All right, so we now have a repository in GitHub. And as you can see, we have a quick setup here and a URL. You have HTTPS, you have SSH, but we're going to go with HTTPS for now. And we're going to copy this URL here because this is very important. This is what's going to link our local machine to this online repository. Okay. And they give you instructions here as well, like how do we push an existing repository into Git. So actually we're going to use this command here, git remote add origin with that URL that I just copied here. As a matter of fact, let me just copy this one instead. We'll come back to my directory and the command prompt, and I'm just going to paste that there. Scroll up so you can see. So we got git remote add origin with the URL that Git gave me, that GitHub gave me in my repository in GitHub. All right. Let's hit enter. Now, nothing happened, but if we want to check to see what went on there, like is this connected to a repo? And so a way to check that is to run this command git remote -v, and you'll see that this folder this directory is connected to that repo. So so far we're looking good. But now how do we push that? Okay, so I'm gonna go back to GitHub and see what it's telling me. Git push -u origin main. Let's copy that. And you can see I'm skipping this one. This is, it looks like it's creating a branch, but we don't want to get into that right now unless we get an error message, but we may need to run that. But for now, I'm going to skip that and go ahead and just put this in here. So what is a git push? Git is pushing this code into that directory, into GitHub. Let's hit enter and see what happens. All right, so we got an error. Maybe I need to run that. Let me go back and follow Git's instructions. It's a good idea to follow what Git's saying. So let's go ahead and copy this. Okay, and now let's run the other command that we just had, git push origin main. All right, so what's happening now? Git is asking us to sign in to, verify that we are who we are, and we're not, we don't want anyone pushing into our repository, so you need to have some sort of verification. So go ahead, log in with the account that you just made, and I'll do that now. We'll sign in with the browser. And we'll go ahead and authorize Git credential manager. All right, authentication succeeded. All right, so that's good. So in the background, after I authenticated, you could see it went ahead with authentication. We got some messages here, but the main one is that it was pushed to the GitHub repo, my first repo. Okay, so that's the success message. So let's go back to GitHub. We'll go to our repository. Let's click on it. And oh, okay. We see there we have our test file. All right, so you can see the text here. Hello world, my first Git file. And so we've successfully initialized Git in our local computer. We added a file. We committed that file to our local repository. We created a GitHub account. And we ran a few commands that Git tells us on how to get those files into GitHub so that you can collaborate with other members of your team or just have it in a safe place so that you don't lose your work. All right, guys, my name is Chris Anderson. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.